The year is 1981. People are bustling to see Raiders of the Lost Ark, music television or MTV is created, and Princess Diana is married to Prince Charles. But all of these events pale in comparison to just one more thing that year: the release of Donkey Kong. The game was created by a little company, I don't know if you've heard of it, Nintendo, though at the time they made shit like this. When this game released, it changed everything. Multiple levels, cutscenes, and most important of all, a story. This simple feature would not only propel Donkey Kong to massive success, but it would change the entire industry as we know it. It was the true beginning of storytelling in video games. Mario has to climb the tower to defeat Donkey Kong and save Princess Peach. I know it sounds simple, but it was unheard of at the time. It was revolutionary then, but little did they know it would turn the tide of history and put the industry on a collision course with film and eventually lead to the creation of God of War Ragnarok, the greatest movie ever made. But hold on, why a collision course with film? Well, first, let's talk about narratives. Why do we care about them? And the key word there is care. Why do we care about a character or event? How do you get someone to care about a fictional story? And I believe the answer is immersion. I want you to think about some of the greatest films ever made. The Godfather, Parasite, the B-movie. I bet every one you thought of is immersive. Relatable characters, sharp writing, tight scripts all get you immersed in a narrative. If the writing sucks, you're not really going to care, are you? You're going to say, this sucks, and move on. If the characters are boring, you're not going to care about them. A character can be well written, but we need to be immersed into their story to care. Immersion is truly the key to the lock when it comes to narratives. A movie could have a fantastic plot and narrative, but without immersion, what's the point? Take Tenet, for example. I, for one, love that film. I consider it to be a great movie. But can I really tell someone that without lying? No, because it isn't immersive. Its plot is too confusing to follow, the characters are dull, and actually, I don't even know if the characters are dull because I can't hear a single word they're saying. Now let's flip the script to video games. Contrary to film, video games did not start as works of art. They were experimental code and entertainment. They were more akin to toys than works of art. And when video games begin, they don't really have narratives. Pong doesn't have anything going on, though they did quickly begin to pursue narratives after the release of Donkey Kong. The original Super Mario Bros. Is a landmark title for video games. Without Mario, you don't have any of this. However, I will now recount the plot of Mario. Bowser is evil and has captured the princess. Mario must travel the kingdom to rescue her. That's it. Now, I wouldn't really put these two narratives on par with each other. Video games had a very long way to go, but they had a secret trick up their sleeve. Interactivity. This is the single most important thing to video games as a medium. Video games cannot exist without it. But why am I talking about interactivity? Well, it all comes back to immersion. While movies use writing, relatable characters, and realism to immerse you, video games took the opposite route. Interactivity is immersion. To be in control is to literally be immersed. You are intrinsically connected to the story of the game through the controller. Even in a game like the original Zelda, you control Link. You explore the world, you fight the monsters, you get hit by the monsters, you fall into a pit and die after getting hit by the monsters. No other medium has this. Not a book, not a movie, not a podcast, not an audiobook, not a Tumblr thread, not a note handed to you by your 9th grade crush. Though at the time, it didn't mean much. Video games didn't really care. And for the moment, video games kept interactivity in their pocket while they began to evolve in other ways. As video games kept growing, much like little Jimmy trying to cheat off of his friend's test in middle school, they began eyeing film. Specifically, its storytelling. I mean, they had these new fancy 3D graphics, they had voice acting. Why not give it a try, right? And try they did, because the video game industry has never stopped trying. Early RPGs start telling complex narratives through dialogue boxes. Then we moved to the PS1 era with games like Metal Gear Solid. I'm Psycho Mantis! Games like Final Fantasy VII. Games like Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
All games that pushed the boundaries of what a narrative in a video game could even be. Complex narratives with actual layered characters brought to life by actual voice acting. Think about where the industry was just a few years back. Then you move on to the PSX Cube generation with games like Halo. Games like Resident Evil 4.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Games like Sonic Adventure.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
All of these fantastic games which push the boundaries even further. And then you hit the PS3 era. This is where shit goes crazy. You know, back in those ancient PS2 times, games were like,
Oh my god, Daddy!
What a shame.
but the PS3 is more like,
Jason! Jason!
the PS3 is where we really start seeing the movie-style storytelling we see in video games today. I mean, are you seeing these games? These are still considered to be some of the best narratives ever told in video games. Characters actually start talking like real people, and there is a genuine effort to make the narratives and characters in video games feel real. Now, part of this was the technical capabilities of the time, but more so the industry leaning harder into the movie-like direction. And this is partly due to the new technological capabilities they had at the time, but also more so just the industry leaning more into a movie-like direction. And this is where I believe video game storytelling split into game games and movie games. Now, first it was game games. Now, what in the Sam hell do I mean when I say game games? A game game is a game whose storytelling acknowledges the strengths and weaknesses of the medium and builds around that in every aspect of its design. And to really show you what I mean, let's talk about Dark Souls.
Nope. Nuh-uh. No. We are not doing Dark Souls.
What? You can't do that. It's in the script.
Nope, I don't care. Everyone and their grandmother's done a video essay on Dark Souls. Dark Souls saved me. Dark Souls saved my life. Dark Souls saved my failing marriage. Dark Souls got me custody of the kids in the divorce. We get it, all right. Dark Souls is pretty cool.
No, you can't just cut this out.
Nope,
I won't let
not
you.
doing it. I don't care. What?
Oh. Not doing Dark Souls, huh?
Okay.
Not doing Dark Souls. You want to rethink that one, pal?
We'll do Dark Souls. Fine.
That's what I thought. Alright. Roll the intro. Oh, also this section is about Shadow of the Colossus. I would consider both of these to be game games. Neither one have a strong, active narrative, and both refrain from trying to tell you a solid story at all. They are both incredibly mysterious and stingy with their stories, and yet they're two of my favorite stories in any video game I've ever played. Dark Souls is famous for its environmental storytelling, but what I really want to talk about is how it acknowledges interactivity as a part of the narrative. The game lacks a strong narrative through line. This world is almost completely devoid of life, and you are given almost zero explanation on who you are or what you're even supposed to be doing. This is all you get.
There are actually two bells of awakening. Ring them both, and something happens. Brilliant, right?
This line. And this line is optional. And speaking of, NPCs are almost like landmarks with how rare they are. Finding someone to talk to in this game is almost harder to do than finding secret Easter eggs in other games. You can learn so much about the world and about the story just from looking around. I remember when I was first playing the game, I traveled through Blighttown and I finally got out of there. I climbed my way back up to Firelink, and then I looked down, just out of curiosity, and I realized that's where I was. I was right down there, and suddenly the structure of the world just clicked. It just made sense. Keep in mind that none of the painstaking environmental storytelling in this game is shown to you. You have to seek it out. The game intertwines the story of the game directly with interactivity, and it created a gaming experience like none I've ever had. Well, save for one game. Shadow of the Colossus does something similar to Dark Souls, but takes it up to another level. The story of the game is that your character, Wander, travels to Forbidden Lands in an attempt to bring this deceased girl back to life. He brings her to an altar where he speaks to a godlike being who offers to resurrect the girl in exchange for scaling and defeating the 16 Colossus that roam the land. So wait, you're saying I gotta climb and beat up these hairy guys to save this girl? Now I know what you're thinking. This is just ripping off a donkey.
Okay.
And you're wrong. The story of the game is very simple. There are only 30 minutes of cutscenes, and they pretty much all happen in the opening and at the ending. Shadow of the Colossus was made with all of this in mind. The story of Shadow of the Colossus is more than vague, even compared to games like Dark Souls. Nor does it give you much lore. I mean, again, from here to here, nothing happens outside of what you do. But that's why the game is so special. The story of this game is not the characters or the plot or the overarching narrative. It's you. The journey that you, the player, go on is the story. Not Wander's journey to save this girl, but your journey across the land. When I recall the story of the game, I remember hanging off the back of a Colossus, getting electrocuted, soaring through the sky, stabbing shit in the head. Not the 2-sentence plot synopsis. The narrative I remember is what I did. My personal experience. But why don't other games achieve this? Well, here's an analogy. Shadow of the Colossus is a frame. It's not a painting, it's not a work of art. It's a frame. Every painting has a frame, and though you never really pay attention, you'd notice if it were gone, right? Frames are always the outside of a work of art. Our eyes know that. So when Shadow of the Colossus comes around with this beautiful, ornate frame, my eyes skip past that, go straight to the center, expecting to see art. But they're met with nothing. Or are they? This canvas is so purposefully empty that when you get to the end of the game, all of your memories have been inked onto it. And suddenly, the picture emerges. It was so empty that you became the painting. It creates such a special and intimate connection between the game and the player. And this effect can only be achieved with a frame of that quality and a canvas that empty. Even in some of my favorite games of all time, I remember those stories as the character's story. Nathan Drake's journey, Joel and Ellie's story. Not this one. This one was all mine, and I will never forget it. Really? You're showing up now, you're advertising your shit now, I'm trying to have this cute little moment, and you're advertising your shit? Thanks. No, that's really great, man. that's great. That's awesome. Oh, really? Oh, I'd like to see you do better. Really? Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. My argument. Oh, you think your argument's better than mine? You think you could debate me? All right, let's have a debate. Wasn't this video about God of War? So back then I said, and this is where I believe video game storytelling split into games and movie games. Now, when I say movie game, I mean games whose storytelling tries to pursue that of filmmaking, aka The Last of Us, aka Uncharted, aka Glover. When I say games became more like movies, I mean that in games before the PS3, characters talked like this.
Jill! Don't scare me. That's what I was going to say.
And now they talk like this.
And I'm sorry for what happened to you. But it's not his fault.
I never said that it was.
Technology caught up with ambition this generation, and studios just began to go wild. While plenty of games had interesting narratives before this is really the first time that games start to tap into the immersion that you get from film. Games start to focus on character writing, performance, emotion, and dialogue. Characters actually talk like people now. Just compare these two clips. Now, it isn't all good, but remember where we came from, okay?
What a shame.
And as games made this transition, they had decades of progress in film to work from. Movies had been improving on immersion from the very beginning. You got silent black and white films with character acting and text that elevate the story. Then you bring in color, which can set the mood. Then you get audio, which completely changes the game. Writers now have more free reign to write even more complex narratives. Actors get to step into a whole new realm of expression. And from there, films just kept evolving. New twists, new genres, cliches emerge, the industry grows, and we have the film landscape we see today. And if you go back and look at this, and this, the difference is night and day. And the video game industry had all of that to work with. And while they created some great games, none of them would come close to the video game industry's magnum opus, God of War Ragnarok.
Death can have me when it owns me.
This game has it all. Beautiful graphics, godlike character work, amazing gameplay, and an intricate story. The game was developed by Santa Monica and is a sequel to God of War 2016, which reinvented the series. The old God of War games had stories, of course, but the focus was never on that. It was on the gameplay. No one was picking this thing up at GameStop for the riveting drama. They get it to hack and slash the shit out of some demons as a Spartan punk, okay? God of War 2016 completely turned the series around with a much more serious and grounded take on the character. Kratos is older and wiser, and he desperately seeks to escape his violent past, almost as if it's a metaphor for the games, And it focuses much more on narrative this time around. There are no loading screens, the camera never cuts, there are no seams in this game. Though, ask anyone, and their favorite part of this game is the dialogue. The relationship between Kratos and his son Atreus is the heart and soul of this game, and it is written to perfection. Their relationship is complicated and strained, but you desperately want to see them come together. But I mean, how could you if this guy was your dad? And how well can this guy raise a kid? The game's narrative was very focused on that dynamic, and for that fact, it was universally praised. But then Ragnarok comes out, and it completely blows that shit out of the water. God of War Ragnarok is the greatest movie you will ever watch. Just look at how the game opens. No words, just acting and emotion. When a game opens like this, you know it's going to be a doozy. And take everything I just said about the first game and up it to 11. Oh, and you think I forgot about the gameplay? Dude, it's God of War. It's amazing. Just look at this shit. And don't even get me started on the story. It takes that incredible writing from the first game and gives it to like 15 characters, each with their own unique and emotional stories. Let's just watch this one small scene of Atreus, aka Loki, talking to Odin, the main villain of the game.
Loki, you made it. I am so honored. I see you've met Heimdall. He reads minds for me.
The boy is false, all father.
This young man, who is my guest, is covered in mud. Care to explain?
He means to betray you.
Is that true, Loki? You a little trickster? I'm just messing around. Of course he means to betray me, huh? Heimdall, why else would he come? I've given him no reason to trust me. Not yet.
In just one scene, you get so much. Odin is so effortlessly set up as the villain here, carelessly revealing he knew about Atreus' plot the whole time, and he just doesn't even care. He dismisses Heimdall, a character who we have already grown to hate, which kinda makes us like him. In just one scene, the big bad villain of the game is made into a three-dimensional character that you can't take your eyes off. And the game is full of scenes like this. And Ragnarok isn't just an amazing movie that puts you in the driver's seat. It's incredibly deliberate about its interactivity. Let's dissect a scene between these two characters during their fight in the middle of the game. Heimdall has been a complete asshole the entire game. He follows Atreus around and mocks him and constantly tries to fuck him over. You are supposed to hate this guy. The game and the writers want you to hate this guy. He is literally making fun of you as you're playing. He literally beat your ass earlier in the game. But more than any of that, you want Kratos to, as he would say,
We must be better.
you don't want to see him default to killing every problem he faces. And so even after multiple phases of this grueling boss fight,
You are going to spare me out of pity!
Let it go, you may live.
in this moment, you and him are aligned. But then Heimdall says this.
Oh, now I am definitely going to gut him.
And suddenly, everything changes. Kratos knows he can't let him live, and so do you as you proceed to finish him off in the last phase of the fight. You aren't just feeling the same way Kratos does, you're taking part to continue the fight. The narrative involves you directly, and so when Kratos does brutally murder this guy, you feel guilty too. Because in that moment, you felt the same way as he did. You thought, I have to kill this guy. And after the deed is done, you feel the same confused regret he does. You had to do it, but what does it mean? You wouldn't feel any of that if the last phase of that fight was just a cutscene. But the game knows just how valuable that bit of interactivity is. And that's my greater point here. Like I discussed earlier with these games that understood the medium so well as to craft narratives tailor-made for it, this game does the same, but while also blending it with movie-style storytelling. It's such a brilliant blend of the two that I have never seen before. I see so many games today whose stories just don't fit. Too many games have stories that are constantly fighting against the fact that it's a video game. They feel inherently disconnected, like the story was written before the game or after the game, and they were just put together. Cutscenes clashing with gameplay, ludonarrative dissonance, and a host of other problems. That is, if you even get much of a story at all. Not only do the story and gameplay work together flawlessly, but they go the extra mile to deeply ingrain the narrative into interactivity in a way that these games just didn't do as well, in my opinion. And when you combine an amazing story with amazing gameplay in the most beautiful and intimate way possible, something new is created. It ascends past all its contemporaries and becomes more than the sum of its parts. It becomes the greatest movie ever made. Okay, so obviously that's kind of exaggeratory. Obviously it isn't a movie, and yes, you could cut out all the cutscenes and make a great movie out of that, mind you. But you'd be doing the game a huge disservice. And by the way, I think there are a ton of other amazing movie-style games out there. I just think that this one is the best. I think it's the peak of video game storytelling right now. It combines decades of evolution from games and movies, and combines them in a way that I think no other game really has. And I just think that's so special. But it certainly won't be the last game to do this. I like to think of it not as the greatest game ever made, but as the greatest game right now, surely with something much greater on the horizon.